No, my lawyer said I can't be Stevie Nicks. I'm just a generic, non-specific look-alike.
And here we are. Welcome to the generic, non-specific Stevie Nicks podcast. I'm your co-host, Randy,
And I'm Anthony.
and we have a very special episode today. In fact, we didn't know this was going to be an entire episode, but it went so well. We're putting this together just for you folks. We interviewed the author of Mirror in the Sky, The Life and Music of Stevie Nicks by Simon Morrison. And we reached out to him after reading the book, which is fantastic, and you need to pick up your copy, just to do a short interview between side A and side B of one of the rarities when we do that. But Anthony, I think you'll agree, we had so much fun and it was so informative that we want to present the entire interview for your listening and viewing pleasure, right?
That's right. We hope you enjoy it.
All right, enjoy the interview. So here we are at the generic, non-specific Stevie Nicks podcast, and today we are so excited because we have the author of Mirror in the Sky, The Life and Music of Stevie Nicks, Mr. Simon Morrison here joining us. Thank you so much for being here, Simon.
Oh, yeah, it's a pleasure. Thanks for inviting me.
Oh, we're so happy to have you. I'm going to tip off the first question. I work in higher education as my career.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting to me that your book reads almost like a scholarly text in a lot of ways. And when I was reading about you, I realized that you actually are a scholarly person who's done research on Tchaikovsky and Russian, Soviet, French music. And it gave me this like joyous surprise to learn your background. So, but that begged the question in my head, how do you go from Tchaikovsky to Stevie Nicks? What prompted you to write about her?
Well, mostly because I've been listening to her stuff since I was young, and I was, a huge fan of Tusk, and from that experience of getting that album as a birthday present, I, started gathering all the others, and then when Stevie Nicks became a solo artist, I began buying the records one by one, and just thinking a lot about, obviously just for pleasure. I just, loved her, loved the stuff and the lyrics. I, over the course of time, obviously wrote about other things like ballet and Russian music because, that's what I studied in the academic setting. But I was always interested in popular music because, and why it's not given enough respect, I guess, in academia. It's sort of the critical downturn in its reputation over the course of the 20th century, the fact that it doesn't have enough snob appeal, that kind of stuff. So the fact that 98% of music that people consume is popular music, right, by definition. So and a lot of my students work in and out of popular music, and so it was a kind of natural thing to finally, when I got the opportunity to kind of pounce and actually do a kind of, passion project like this. And it was on invitation of the publisher, University of California Press, and the editor there was really keen on a book on, initially I actually thought about a Fleetwood Mac book, but she was really keen on a book about Stevie Nicks. And so I took that on, but it's the University of California Press. So it's an academic press, and for various reasons, I guess we could get into, I took kind of more of an academic track with that book than a lot of Stevie Nicks fans would have liked, I imagine. So we can talk.
I think you're wrong about that because, something that Anthony and I were talking about is how much information is packed into this. I mean, there have been other books written, but many of them don't go into the detail that you do, and your academic background really paved the way for this to be very well researched, and the annotations and everything were fantastic. So everyone I've talked to has just really praised how well researched and how appealing this is.
Thank you.
And that it wasn't, you said this, I'm going to remind you, you said this, Randy, that it was factual and historical. It wasn't salacious. It wasn't like
Right.
the drug use and such. And I really appreciated that.
Yeah, that stuff, the sex lives of rock and roll people, the drug lives, life on the road. I mean, she's talked plenty about all of that stuff, and she's been very honest about it. So, what am I supposed to do? Go, like, kind of like look up the hospital records? Although at one point, just to get the dates down, I kind of probed that a bit. But I thought. You know, it's interesting how many drug-addled male rockers there are out there, right? But her drug problems, of course, are the front and center, and her
Right.
sex is front and center, not Mick Jagger's, and well,
Well,
relatively speaking. But so I thought that there's a pattern in the way that she's discussed by critics, men mostly, that actually, looked at the tawdrier sides of her life and rock and roll and put them all together, and to the detriment of her musicianship. So I thought that and actually I'm not able to write about the bedroom. It's not my training. I'm a novelist, and I also when I read the bio that's out there, Gold Dust Woman, right? Which
right.
it's inappropriate to talk about a rival book, but there was a lot of that in there, and I thought, and some of it for me was a little cringy. So I thought, if I'm gonna do this artist service, I should try and focus a little bit on, how these songs came into being and what makes them awesome, in my opinion, and less about that. And because actually, ultimately it's kind of boring, the fact that she had lots of affairs and this and that happened to her. I mean, she's a young person, it's going to happen. Young famous person. So all of that seemed to me, either she talked about it in a way that, was enough, and then this sort of way in which journalists, newspaper reviewers, even when albums came out, the first reviews, they would always touch on this. Or when she was live, they would talk about, a lot of stuff, all sorts of her voice quality, her weight, all of this stuff. And it just seemed to me really kind of, well, misogynist. So, and I tried to, as a male author dealing with an iconic female singer, I was pretty self-conscious about that.
Well, we really appreciate that, because we try to do the same on this podcast too, is, try to give not so much of that male gaze interpretation of her and her music, but it was so nice to read in a way that provided context for why she was writing these songs during Rock a Little and why she was doing this. But I want to go back just a little bit, because you said Tusk was kind of your first exposure. Do you have is there a favorite track or a track that has special meaning from Tusk for you?
Yeah, it's Storms is the one that I've always loved. I think that's a marvelous there's a lot of gems on that album, and some quirky stuff as well. But that song, that ballad has always struck me as really really affecting, and I just the texture of it, the grain of her voice in that, and it's a devastating track, and it's one of those tracks that not only I've actually given that to students to talk about what makes it great as a kind of technical exercise, like how is it put together and so forth. So I've known it for a while in sort of teaching side of things, but I always thought that, I think what makes a great artist great in part is the fact that, they produce things that kind of echo throughout lifetimes. You can think about Joni Mitchell's Both Sides Now, right? Which is written when she's really, really young. And it's matured and grown as a song, and it's taken all of this weight. And whereas Stevie's kind of the opposite. She actually wrote very, very mature, kind of late in life songs early on. I think, like Landslide, and this one particularly. Yeah. And then, and I was amazed, loving that song, and through the love of that song, really just listening endlessly to Tusk, and it's weird the way it seduces you and brings you in, and then it has all of these things that are kind of undercut the listening experience at the same time. Like you kind of like there was some article about Tusk. It said, you're sort of lured in like a Venus flytrap in that opening sort of slow ballad, and then you get, what makes you think this kind of noise comes at you like just kind of kicked out of it. This sort of space again. But I was amazed when I talked with Ken Kalea, the producer of Tusk and obviously Rumors, one of two producers, and he said that he thought Storms was a turkey. It almost didn't make the cut, and it was a terrible thing. And basically everyone had to kind of put it together. And I'm like, no, it's actually a really great song. I just have to disagree. So.
Yeah, I mean, Ken's books are really good, and I like that. I can see them right here from where I'm sitting.
Yeah.
There's definitely some male gaze there, though, in the way that he talks about both of the female songwriters.
Yeah, and in the correspondence I had with him, he was pretty acerbic. And I think I don't know. I think with all, I mean, he had his issues with Lindsey Buckingham as well, and I think that
Sure.
his experience was, I think he felt to some degree disrespected, maybe, or cut out. I mean, he has said publicly that he put like 6,000 hours into producing Rumors, and he said, I mean, it's an amazing comment. I don't know if it's true or not. It's probably exaggerated by like 6, but then he said that he can't even listen to the record because it's just this kind of trauma for him of
Oh wow.
every note went through 1,000 passes or something. So but yeah, he's kind of like this sort of dismissal of a song that is magical to me, to my ear anyway, and a lot of fans. And if you look at comments on those songs online, they just in some instances those songs really not only provided solace and comfort, but save people's lives, help with bereavement, all of that.
Absolutely.
Yes. You
May
had
Oh, go ahead.
No, Anthony, I know.
Well, I'm
you had something
segueing
else.
because we're
Yes.
talking about something I think all three of us consider a masterpiece and, an
Yes.
incredible piece of writing. So you briefly in your book talked about something that Randy and we still love this song, but we think is an example. We use it as an example of some of Stevie's less tight writing. We call it Mabel Normand disease. Where she has these very long lyrics and they're shoved into the tiniest melody. So tell us about what you think about Mabel Normand.
Mabel Normand?
And the whatever, wax poetical.
Well, I mean, it's a vamp. There are a lot of tracks that are kind of in terms of a great melodic hook. You can't say that there's much there, but this is a vamp, and it's a narrative, and it's basically storytelling with a kind of groove behind it. And so what I was interested in that track, besides the very I found really sort of there's a lot of cognitive dissonance in the arrangement of that song. But she said at one point that she was really into kind of a liturgical chant, that which is a kind of this. I mean, I don't exactly know what she means, but it's more like she's interested in this kind of this amorphousness and just sort of space that you can get into with certain melodic lines. And a lot of her demos, even for famous songs like Sarah, were very, very long, as you know, and were cut down further when they became singles. And this track, Mabel Normand, what I was intrigued was the fact of it. Like why write a song about this silent film heroine? And then when she in her public comments actually said that the tragedy of Mabel Normand, personal tragedy, and the fact that she was a very serious actress who was kind of stuck and trapped doing these, kind of comic roles, and she had substance abuse problems, romantic problems, was to some degree a witness to a murder. Just a sort of scandalous existence in very young Hollywood, and that the Mabel Normand's fate kind of haunted her. And then I was struck by the fact that rather than write a song that was kind of really inside that space of this character, it was just this kind of matter of fact, almost police report like description, of her feet. And I thought that that was really interesting. It was this kind of like, it's like rather than being empathetic and being, a woman resonating with another woman, to being that kind of in that sort of feminist space, it was that detached kind of just recitation, so beautiful, detachedly ironic. It's like basically what she's doing is parodying the kind of, oh, isn't that too bad what happened to her? Kind of, male narrative thing about. And then, so I was interested in that. And then the other thing was when I wrote to Mabel Normand scholars, because there's a whole bunch of them, right? That are up, and they're biographers and silent movie kind of fetishists, and that's an entire world of its own. And they hated that song. Those who knew it just hated it, and they just, they thought it was just the word, and that too was kind of interesting to me, and sort of like I'll take something like that and actually try and think about this reaction and why.
Mabel Normand scholars,
and they are not like.
I'm excited.
they are like amateur sleuths, and I mean that in the most positive sense of people. Like the passion is just intense.
But I think you nailed what Randy and I think when you said the police report, like we would say, oh, it's but I love the way you put it. That's right on the nose.
It's the police blotters, like, isn't that so beautiful lying there?
Right.
So,
but
when I talk with Stevie Nicks, super fans who run these big sites, and most of them are not down with that song. They just don't get it, and they like a lot of her other.
Though we make that the butt of a joke, we both love that song.
It's crazy.
I find, you can. I find it. It's like I don't love it. I don't hate it. It's just very different, and so I kind of go with that.
Yeah, it's definitely in a category of. Well, actually, it's a category header. It's what we call all of the other songs that have that stream of consciousness in them.
Yeah. It's kind of got that spun out quality, and you can imagine like when they put it together, like they come sitting around in what is it, Nashville, where they recorded those albums. Dave sitting around just like trying to come up with this kind of acerbic, kind of like. It's a kind of like irritated, kind of anxious kind of accompaniment. And I think in a weird way, it kind of is not a bad fit for this kind of police report description of.
Randy, do you mind? I have a follow-up I hadn't thought of. So would you put Show Them the Way in that category, Simon?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
That's another one I like. And then when I Randy knows I haunt the YouTube reaction channels reacting to Stevie Nicks, and I always give them like $5 on Venmo to do that song. And then not only do they react to it, but a lot of the diehard Stevie people chime in and go, I've never heard that one. And I find that so interesting. But I think the way you described it, it made me think of that song too.
She's got a kind of storytelling side to her, and I think had she had things worked out differently. I mean, remember she had these early interests in doing films and animated cartoons and things like that, and being sort of narrating those, and maybe that was what she kind of had in mind for some of these songs. It does brush up against, again, the naysayers would say, oh well, not such a melodic gift, or doesn't know all the chords or whatever. But you listen to, when I listen to the demos, particularly the unproduced stuff, it's a very interestingly inflected melodic style that she has. It's just intuitive. It's a very innate gift. She does know, she played guitar early on. She learned folk chords, but I think that when you see in her working with Lindsay, these outtakes and things like that, and the two of them arguing about this and that. It really, her kind of sort of talkative, sort of recitational style, poésie melique kind of style, sort of mellifluous kind of recitation is just goes against kind of so much of the norms of rock and pop. I mean, they just don't fit, her drafts just don't fit into those envelopes that certainly Warner Brothers wanted. And then, later producers wanted of her. And so there is a terrific intuitive melodic gift that responds to things very naturally and very affectingly. But it's just hard to bind up into what producers demand, I think.
No, that is very true. You brought up two things that I want to discuss, but we're going to start with, you mentioned ballets and animated films and things like that. And, one of the pieces of her career that I'm very interested in is how she went from, uh, the Rumors Tusk era, and she started to get her solo deal, and that was actually going to be a soundtrack to the film Rhiannon, which over the years has become ballet. Then it was going to be an animated film, and then she was going to do Goldfish and the Ladybug, and now I think in the last few years, after Game of Thrones came out, she really kind of fixated on that HBO kind of prestige for it. But given your background, sorry, Anthony, I'm stealing your question.
It's all good. Yes.
Given your background and the fact that you've also produced, performing arts, if you could have any or all of Stevie's catalog to play with and present some sort of performance art, what would it be? What would you want to do?
Oh, well, that's a really interesting question. I would say that I would actually kind of like try to reverse engineer a lot of those songs and actually just work with the demos and actually put together a kind of Stevie, like restore Stevie Nicks to Stevie Nicks kind of thing.
Ah,
Oh, wow.
Like,
Okay.
because I mean, the long version of Sarah, which I mentioned, is really
Yeah.
terrific, and it's for the diehards, right? It's
Yeah.
really get inside of that. The outtakes, the Joan of Arc outtake. It's an
Yeah.
incredible song, the sort of night galleries tracks. All of these are like haunting and strange, and for in some instances inexplicable reasons were cut.
Yes.
Sort of Planets of the Universe, the demos of that are far superior to. It's a gorgeous, gorgeous track, and it's like, I don't buy this kind of narrative out there. It's like that Silver Springs, they didn't fit on Rumors, they were tusks or they were cut. It's like there was just, there was just a lot of bias against her that was going on in those studios. And then that track, there's just melodic magic and the planets of the unit. That is just a
Right.
wonderful piece of music. And then when she recorded it in a faster way with, her producers making some bad choices, it just lost a lot. So I would actually think about just not a kind of like unplugged, but just basically a sort of, unproduced, and just kind of, I'd say reverse engineer a lot of that stuff, because it got, at first it got corporatized for, how it worked in the late 70s, where, there was a certain sound that was going to sound great on the FM on your car in the suburbs. It was going to be the kind of like, take it easy lifestyle kind of music. And then you have this singer on one hand, she looks the part, doe-eyed, petite, beautiful, dreamy, but a real edge to her. And that kind of was cut out or replaced. And then her Longours, as an artist who, listened to a lot of ballads and folk music growing up, she just left a lot on the table. A lot was left on the cutting room floor that I think that you could put together a kind of, program that would actually just show her as being an entirely different artist than maybe you thought based on these albums.
Hey, I have my credit
Based
card
on the
right
stories
here.
about the drugs.
I know. When are we buying tickets?
When you're ready, I'm ready. I have my credit card.
Well, we'll do it together. We'll all do it together.
Okay, don't say that.
You
'cause
have
we will
nice
take you
equipment
up on
there.
it. We will take you up on that. But that's such a great segue to my second question, because you did some really good work in this book on some of the unreleased stuff and alternates and things like that. And there's a great appendix of some of the demos. But you omitted my favorite one, and I am heartbroken. I am absolutely
I wonder
heartbroken.
which one it
Might have been
is.
just a-
I know what it is.
Tell me.
Yeah, it was Julia.
Oh yeah. Well,
That is like,
yeah.
it's the holy grail for a lot of the fans. And I noticed that you mentioned the film, in there when you were talking about Rock a Little and stuff. So, if there's one, I'm of two minds about this, because I think that the demos that are circulating out there are amazing, especially the it was almost on Belladonna. It was on a couple of test
Almost.
pressings,
Yeah.
and then it got yanked off.
Yeah.
And so in that way, I'm really thankful that it's out there, but also half of me wants it re-recorded for like 24 karat gold too, or at least officially released on a Belladonna reissue or something.
Yeah, I like first I'm sorry I didn't
It's fine.
No,
I just knew I
there's
was
a lot
gonna.
of songs that I didn't write about and
Yeah.
then people complain it's just about the songs.
No.
I like some of the complaints are like, this is a book that's just about the notes and the chords and how songs are made. It's not about the music. And I'm like, what? Like what exactly?
Wait,
Yeah.
What is this thing called the music that anyway?
That isn't about notes. Okay.
It's not about the notes. It's about performances. That's a different thing, and it's also about
Okay.
how the fan base owns the songs in different ways. I think that there was. Here's an anecdote. There are things you love that you don't want to write about, right? So it was hard for me to actually do with Planets of the Star, the Universe. I love that song so much, and
I do
almost
too.
thought I love it too much to write about because if I write about it, I'll ruin it.
Yes.
So there was that, and then because when I was a student, I had a friend who was super into Brahms, and we had to do these kind of analysis assignments, chords and structure and so forth of Brahms pieces. And he just wrote hearts and stars all over the score and handed it in and got an F, but he was proud because it's like, there's nothing I want to say besides how much I just love this. And so there is one of the problems in my racket is that, a lot of books about music are like, they're so descriptive of what's going on in the piece. It's like the writing is doing the listening for you or something. It's like, what is the point of this book? Just to like tell you, get inside and go blow by blow by something like what exactly is going on here? Because it's not really about how it was written, it's how you're analyzing it, but you're analyzing it in such a thorough way that it's just like, I don't know, it really, yeah, it's like, why do you need to listen to it after this book? Or maybe to recover from the book, you need to listen to it. But there were a lot of songs that I thought I should write about, and they didn't fit, or they were kind of too close to the heart sometimes,
Sure.
or they didn't have sort of a detail that I thought that I could kind of weave in there, and then in a lot of instances when like writing about Landslide, I kind of went into detail on that one because it's so loved and it's considered so magical. I thought maybe there's something about talking about what's going on in it that might help to explain how it creates these meanings and these feelings. So there was a lot of choices that I made. Like some of them, Mabel Normand. I mean, no one I think in their right mind would spend like page after page on like I did, but
It was so fun to read. It was
it's so
so fun to
perverse in a
read.
way. It's like, I thought, you know what? Let's just take one of these songs that like people really kind of don't like. And when I remember when I submitted the manuscript, one of the readers was like, I don't know why
I'm in my book.
you're going off to this other planet and just fixating on this one song and giving
My
this.
book might be called Operation Mabel Normand. That's the title I'm throwing around. And I love that we have someone who can understand that joke.
Yeah, but that's the thing that part of me was like, yeah, and you can't ask her these questions because
Well, that's the question. That's a question I had for you. Was there any attempt to get her input or work with her team on your book? And
Yeah.
are you able to talk about what happened if there was?
Well, what happened was when I even before I got the contract, I reached out to her people and actually there was a person I met on a plane who knows her personally and knows Kaufman personally, and Amy Kaufman's the LA Times daughter of Howard Kaufman, and so anyway I was able to communicate on email to her through these people, and she was basically like, well, I'm just not interested, right? And just like, basically I'm 70. She's up for the second Rock Hall Award and is giving all these interviews, and I just can't deal with this kind of a book, and I don't want another. And she was like pretty horrified about the idea of an academic prof going after, because she there was the sense that she'd be burned by
Sure.
the guy would actually feed into this narrative.
Oh, wow.
And what I ended up doing was respecting that and thinking that, what could I get out of interviews? Or, even if I pester and pester and pester. And I decided to actually go at the opposite way, which is actually like, I would actually spend a lot of time on the childhood and the upbringing and where she sang for her grandfather and things that are forgotten, and find these details and send them to her. And so I did that, and as I wrote the book, I just sent in, so that they had it all even long before it was published. And it was just kind of like I just said, I'm not going to be another one of these people extracting your time or extracting something from you. So in a way you can say, oh, Morrison's just BSing us, he didn't get the access. But I can also say that I kind of, that in those initial contacts, I actually thought that maybe listeners take and take and take, and fans take and take and take, and maybe if I could at least write something that's a real appreciation, and some things and photographs and stuff like that she herself had forgotten, that actually maybe that would be just a kind of, sort of my thank you for somebody who actually made my life better.
That's
So that's
very
it.
touched
The
by
idea
that.
of being a kind of kind of, if there's I think my sense of working like with some of the living artists I know, like in the dance world, like Mark Morris and so forth, there's the creative process, the art and the artist, there are very separate things. And any popular musician star has a persona they put on stage, and sometimes the real person and that persona get mixed up together. And I think there's lots of examples of this. But with her, it struck me that this is somebody who, and this I know directly, knowing where she lives, et cetera, in LA and other places. It's a very isolated existence with a small group of women who have been with her 30, 40 years now, that she can trust and count on. And sort of an adopted circle of kids of, performers that have worked with her over the years that she dotes on and so forth. And it's a really safe kind of space for somebody who can't go out. Her social life basically is like, she'll go to like former producers, former managers, she'll go to their houses for movie night, and just watch movies there. So she's kind of friends with this sort of circle of people that have been her backers. But she can't go to a restaurant. I was stunned actually when I was at a gym, and there she was, suddenly incognito, at the
Oh
gym.
wow.
Like, what
Wait,
the hell?
Stevie Nicks works out. This is breaking news.
This is like, well, I'm not gonna, it was just like, it's like she incognito, and they kind of, then the shot shoots everyone to look like, don't blow my cover kind of thing. But
Right.
it's like just to get out, I think, but she's on the top
I
floor
love
of
it.
this tower on the beach. And but it's just, to me, I felt like, I wasn't, and a lot of people I know that know her personally, Tony Barrett, for example, that producer, and Rick Knowles, et cetera, whom I met and talked with, and then just hung around the studios to gather information about how these records were put together. And it was like this, it was, you get a sense that she's wonderfully dreamlike, dreamy, and can be, can have bad moods, and but to kind of do a kind of rich exploration of these songs and so forth, I didn't think that would necessarily be so fruitful, because what she had to say in music, she said in music, and that's it. And that's what I found over and over again with artists. Their statement is the work, and how you want to play with it is up to you.
Well, I think that part of the most important work you did in this book, and the stories behind the songs and everything was great, but you really did make a case, and especially with doing some of that technical explanation of how gifted she is as a musician, and how that is not acknowledged enough in her career, because she wouldn't be in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame twice without the work, as you say, and her letting it speak for itself.
Well, and she wrote her songs herself, which is actually in short supply these days.
Yes.
I won't name names, but there's a certain person that's striding the globe right now. What I also thought was odd was, and looking at the lyrics of, say, the Joan of Arc song, and the Alice in Wonderland song, and actually being nerdy enough to actually go to Joan of Arc experts and saying, "What do you think of these lyrics?" And it turns out that she's a really canny reader of things, and she did read some of these texts in college, and that the other, the songs like Gypsy and Personal and the fairy tale like imagery a lot, of the fact that she was into Twilight and she did those songs, and Beauty and the Beast, and these things that are actually looked at as kind of trite because they are about really young women's, teenage girls' imaginations, and the fact that she still privileges that and actually really thinks that teenage girls are badass, and that she herself was a badass teenage girl, and that she hung on to that identity and that space, which is actually something that the rest of the world doesn't take seriously. There's no problem being a teenage boy forever in rock and roll land.
No.
But only being a teenage girl is something that's to be looked down upon, or to be chased away or suppressed. And I think that if you look at the current crop of great song singers out there right now, Melanie Martinez or Lana Del Rey or Billie Eilish, even on the darker side of things, and Taylor, you actually see they're benefiting from a space that Stevie Nicks opened up for them as artists, which is actually one of allow the female imagination, young girls' imaginations to matter. And the other thing about me pushing around notes is not only to try and, it's what I do, I can't help myself to some degree, but it was, on one hand, to sort of say that the world of music is in these productions and money and corporations behind it all. It really didn't have a space at all in the 70s and 80s, with a few exceptions. Joni Mitchell, maybe Janis Joplin on the harder side, for feelings, and actually feelings really matter. And even the classical music that people know and love to the present day, like Rachmaninoff, it's about feeling. And somehow that's not considered to be worthwhile. And there's a long and disturbing history associated with trivializing feelings and emotion for other things, rational thought and rational processes, which affects popular music. And I think that's been to the detriment of frankly, our reality. So here's somebody that actually created a wonderful space for her fans, young and old women, mothers and daughters, people like us, and yeah, without her, it would have been a lot harder for Taylor, for example, to be who she is, I think.
That's a really good point. I was, while you were speaking, I was thinking of different artists. I don't want to call them out, but female artists along the way who started out as really serious singer-songwriters and got pushed into that, wear a little boy shirt kind of genre. Jewel, like, I named her. So that's unfortunate. But Stevie, she was like not.
Yeah, I mean, I think Taylor Swift would have still been, haters gonna hate, and one or two, and instead, she went through the gauntlet of criticism, merge, and sort of superhero. But that happened to our beloved because she was pushed around, and well, people tried to push her around, in those first solo albums to lock her into this sound, and she would find different kind of supporting pieces over the course of time. Petty. And that was Guy's World, that band, and various others, and Prince briefly, and at the end, she's, I think, in this 24 karat gold record, there's a lot about her kind of returning to, had things been different and had she met up with different artists early on, like a young Tom Petty instead of Fleetwood Mac, you could have seen, a very different sound emerge from that.
Yeah.
It would have been, I think, a little bit more elastic and authentic to what she was about,
Absolutely. Well, I don't want to take up a lot more of your time, but Anthony, do you have anything else?
Randy and I are seeing Stevie in Dallas next week in concert. The last time we were in concert together, we got serendipitously close to maybe going backstage together. And the people who did have the backstage passes, we told our story.
Carolyn Brooks was sitting right behind us.
Right. If you haven't listened to episode 1 of our podcast, listeners, go back and listen. That's how we met. We told them that story really quickly. And one of them was teetering on giving us backstage passes that they were going to use. And when they changed their mind, they said, "What do you want us to tell Stevie?" So what we said was she had recently commented there was a little regret about not having children. So we said, tell her she has children. She has changed people's lives. These two little gay boys from across the United States came together because of her, etc. So I know you're a scholarly academic, but if we got backstage to meet Stevie next week, what would you want her to tell us from you?
I can't do better than that. First of all, I think that she's changed a lot of people's lives, and I also think she is one of those. I mean, you know this from your own experiences with the music, but also if you go to those Night of 1,000 Stevies events, those, the amount of love and the amount of warmth and safety and acceptance, and the idea that this was a great artist who, on one hand, could be the transcendent, all-knowing, all-powerful, mythic heroine on stage, whatever, the witch persona, and deeply vulnerable at the same time. I mean, that seam, right? Pulling it off on one hand, the beautiful scarf, despite, the hurt. The irony and parody in it, the pain is still real. All of those great contradictions that great artists maintain. I think that I would just say to her the same thing that you did. Is this like, you don't know me, but I'm one of your progeny disciples, one of the people whose lives you've shaped and changed, and she's, one of the strangest and most beautiful things I actually read. It was completely absurd on one hand. There was this election in Brazil, and that horrible person, Bolsonaro, was voted out barely, right? And that election was going on, and people on social media who are deep Stevie Nicks fans living in Brazil, they're like, they're going to steal the election from us. Help us, Stevie. Like somehow she get through this magic kind of. And I thought, there is something about that. It's like, there is something you can believe in, and you're a superstar, and you're rescuer. So that's all I'd say. She's just, in all sorts of senses, larger than life and larger than music.
Well, we'll do that, and we'll also tell her to read your awesome book.
They have a copy of it. She's not one, by the way, because of her eyesight. She's not one to actually sit down and go through it.
We'll tell her you'll come read it to her then.
But there's an audiobook.
We'll do audiobook. Yeah.
No, Simon will personally come and read it to her. That's what.
Yes.
Play all the songs. Yeah.
Right. Play all the songs. read it to her in your dreams house.
Live
On
at
the bed, on
live
the
at
floor.
live at the Old Timer. That's the current name of the now closed Mickey's Tavern, where she got her start in
Oh
Altadena.
yeah. There you go. That's it.
Awesome.
Well, Simon, thank you so much for taking time
It's a
out of your
pleasure.
day to do this. This was so enjoyable. And I hope you continue this with Mirror in the Sky Part 2.
Well, I'll have to do Julia.
Yeah, yes, you will. We'll call the book Julia.
I will. Julia and Mabel.
Julia and Mabel. Oh my God. That's
Back
what
from
we
the
need.
dead.
I'm down.
Mabel Normand back from the dead listening party.
I love it.
Well, it's
I
great
love it.
meeting you, and have a great time in Dallas.
All right, we will.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank you
so
for your
much.
time
Bye-bye.
so much.
All right.
Goodbye.
Yeah.
And we're back, and we want to thank Simon again so much. We thought that was such an amazing interview. We hope you enjoyed it. Please go get his book. Bye, Simon Morrison's book. Oh, and we want to thank Sweden. We have an increased number of percentage of folks from Sweden listening to our podcast. Thank you so much. And for your information, Randy and I will be in Dallas together next week, seeing Stevie Nicks in concert with some guy, Billy.
I don't know.
I don't know.
I
So
don't
there'll be
know.
lots of shenanigans. We might do some lives. We don't know. We're figuring it out.
I do also want to say, don't forget to like, share, please comment, subscribe. We
Oh
love
yeah,
hearing
fight
from
with
you.
us. Tell us we're all wrong if you want to, or say, hey, I agree. Show some
Yeah.
love.
We will love it if you say you love Mabel Normand.
We'll love it if you say you don't love Mabel.
Maybe. But until then, yes.
We'll see you on the other side of the mirror.
Well, all right, said Alice.
Peace.
Peace out.